Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever your time frame is. This is the Who Cares About Justice podcast brought to you by the Cares Justice Institute. We are excited. I am your host, Mark C. McGuire Sr., and we're just excited today to bring you another episode of these podcasts that we believe will be mind wrenching, that we believe will be mind altering in many cases, and hopefully convincing all others to the cause that we have at the CARES Justice Institute. Our objective of this podcast is to create conversations and cause evolving empowerment around the experience of inequity, inequality, and injustice of Blacks in America. We are setting out to inform, impact, and inspire. We want to bring you what you need to know and then give you ways to respond. We believe that conversation is the impetus to relationships, and relationships should cultivate action and power. We want to talk about the plight of Black men and women in America, people of color, and we want to give insight to a long-term situation that we believe continues to need to that continues to have a need to be addressed. But we don't want to just talk about men because we understand that a lot of times it's about Black men in America. But we do also recognize historic female figures like Abigail Adams, who believed that slavery was evil and a threat to the American democratic experiment. And with gender justice being as important as racial justice, Abigail Adams said, "Do not forget the women, for within our hearts also burns a passion for justice." So during these episodes, it's our intent to bring historical data, to look at events, real-time occurrences, marketplace impact, personal stories, and as we have done so for over a year, interviews with people who we believe are definitely on the front line. We champion against any violation of the Imago Dei, the God-breathed existence on the inside of us that says there's something about your existence that is significant. And we believe that there should not be any level of violation to that. The CARES Justice Institute has a vision of eradicating racism while addressing injustices, any level of inequity and inequalities of the opportunity against Blacks and people of color to thrive in America. We believe, as the great MLK was quoted in saying, the time is always right to do what's right. And even more so, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Here's my statement. Humanity is a right. It's not something we need to earn. It's not something that we have to prove someone deserves. It's a right. The moment someone is born, humanity and being treated in a humane manner is a right. It is a right of an American. It is a right of any Black American and any American of color and across the board. What is racism that we want to eradicate? Prejudice, discrimination, and antagonism of one race group over another with the ability to have superiority and the intention or desire to exclude, oppress, or to be injurious. So who cares about justice? It's important for us because we recognize that justice should be found everywhere. We look back to the 3/5 Compromise of 1787. We look back on the 13th Amendment, the Emancipation Proclamation. We look back on the 14th Amendment of due process. And then we look back at the 15th and 19th Amendments, where voting then was given a right to Black men in the 15th Amendment and to women in the 19th Amendment. But do we actually see this process being employed, or we find ease in allowing these processes to take place? Or how we found ourselves with a system that many people have said is broken, but it's actually not broken. But there was an intent for prejudice and preferential treatment, violating genuine and authentic civil rights, social justice, and racial equity. So today, we believe that you can't change what you don't confront, and we will not confront until you're convicted within. Today we have a very special guest, a great friend of mine, one of the greatest, and I'll say, because I'm 55 years old now, young minds in America. I just believe my nickname for him is YG. He's doing some phenomenal things in Jacksonville, Florida. And I just believe, even though Jacksonville, Florida is the greatest landmass of a city in these United States of America, I believe that just Jacksonville, Florida cannot contain all that he has to offer the world. This particular gentleman that I'm speaking of is Mr. Travis Williams. He's a proud native of Jacksonville, Florida, where he resides with his wife and their children. Currently, Mr. Williams is Vice President of Operations and Impact for LIFT JAX, and we'll talk about that more in a moment. Mr. Williams strives to be a true community servant of Jacksonville through local board work and volunteering, primarily in the areas focused on economic development, urban revitalization, and services benefiting the less privileged. His commitment to excellence and servant leadership presents him with many opportunities to advise on initiatives and projects throughout the city of Jacksonville. Mr. Williams currently serves as the co-chair of the Jax Chamber Lewis and White Business League Advisory Board, chair of Stanton Alumni Association Board of Directors, a board member for local nonprofits, Rethreaded, the Claire White Mission, and the Potter's House International Ministries. And he co-chairs the ULI of Northeast Florida's DEI committee. His service has also extended nationally, and he has been called upon to lead initiatives around diversity and inclusion in the financial service industry. Mr. Williams has received several recognitions for his leadership and service, among them the Young Alumni Achievement Award from the University of North Florida and the 40 Under 40 by the Jacksonville Business Journal. I am excited and honored to bring to the Who Cares About Justice podcast none other than Mr. Travis Williams. Hello, sir.
P. Mac, how are you doing, sir? Dr. McGuire. I slipped up and I gave my nickname too.
That's
it's
all
good
right.
to see you, sir. Glad to be here.
For those who have been real slow and not paying attention is the Pastor McGuire tag that I received back in 2018. So I'm honored to have you here, sir. We're looking forward to what today is going to bring us. So I've given a brief bio, but you tell us in your own words, who is Travis Williams?
Well, firstly, thank you for the opportunity. It's great to be here with you. I always count it a blessing and a joy to be able to spend time with you. And so first, Travis is a child of God. I would say that's the first thing, and I'm fortunate to be one. I'm a husband to my wife of over 10 years now. My college sweetheart, my best friend. I am a father to amazing kids. I'm a senior now because I have a junior and a son, which is an exciting thing, and did not think I'd be fortunate enough to be in this position. I'm a servant leader, and so I'm fortunate to be able to do that in many aspects, be it organizationally as a leader, or in the community, again, through some of the board work you mentioned and other initiatives that I get a chance to influence. And so that is really my reason for being, I believe, is servant leadership, serving and leading in whatever capacities I find myself, firstly, at home with my family, be it ministry through my local church, or for me, ministry in the workplace and in the marketplace, in all the positions that I get a chance to hold. So that's a little bit about Travis.
Well, listen, when I first moved to Jacksonville 2018, I kind of caught you on the move. You were an entrepreneur. You had your own business, doing great work there, and then you were working with the city. And then we experienced COVID, and then sometime either right before or right after that, we know that you were moved to what's known now as LIFT JAX. And so I had an opportunity to do a cope session with the Orlando Magic and LIFT Orlando. And so I was able to get a firsthand opportunity to look at some of the culminating work of a LIFT city initiative as they had, have progressed a little further. And so it just really gave me a greater level of respect and honor for what you're doing and attempting to do in the greater Jacksonville area. So if you could, for a moment, kind of just give us, and take your time, kind of give us a rundown of what is LIFT JAX and what does that all mean?
Yeah, well, it's an amazing work that I'm very fortunate to be able to take part in. I give a little bit of background on kind of what got me there because you mentioned some of my background. I cut my teeth professionally in the financial services industry. So I'm an entrepreneur by trade. I started a planning firm, a wealth management firm, boutique firm out of college that put me in an economic situation that I did not expect to be in at that young age in my 20s. And the Lord blessed that business, grew it. And then I made a crazy move and sold that practice a few years ago and shocked a lot of people, even myself. But that move really catapulted me into a different direction and had a chance to help lead one of the larger government agencies here in Jacksonville, which gave me a strong governmental background in how the public sector works. And from that, was asked to help come in and lead a new organization, LIFT JAX. And I previously was on the board there, so helped kind of start that organization, and then had the opportunity to step down from that role on the board, step into this role of VP of operations. And so LIFT JAX is, I call it, we position ourselves as really a neighborhood development organization. Our mission is to eradicate generational poverty in Jacksonville. We do that by developing neighborhoods. And so our focus, we have a very narrow focus. We always say if you're thinking zip codes, you're thinking too big. We look to bring a concentrated effort of strategic investments into a concentrated area called a neighborhood. And the neighborhood we work in is the Historic Eastside neighborhood, a neighborhood that's very near and dear to me because Providence would have it that the first neighborhood that this organization would choose to partner with is the neighborhood that my family has been in for over 100 years. My first family members got to the East Side in the early 1900s. And so the work that we do, looking to address generational poverty, looks to make strategic investments in four main areas. We call them our four pillars of work, similar to what Lift Orlando has. Investments in education, investments in what we call community wellness, which are your amenities of a neighborhood, your parks, your green spaces, your public safety, food insecurity, investments in housing, mixed income housing, as we call it, and then long-term financial vitality, which deals with the business sector, commercial corridor, small businesses. And again, the strategic investments. And I think that terminology is important because a part of my ideology in this work is you cannot program your way out of a poverty situation. Eliminating poverty from communities takes strategic investments. We get into poverty through a lack of investments, both public and private. And so we're very narrowly positioned, PMAC, to focus in on what are the investments that a neighborhood has missed out on that we can raise the capital to make happen. And I think of capital in threes. Normally, when I say capital, it's fiscal capital that folks think of, which is an important piece. I think of capital in threes: relational capital, intellectual capital, and fiscal capital. And our main goal is to, as my colleague normally says, fight to bring resources or capital to the East Side. And that is really what our organization does. And I'll give you a couple examples that maybe we can dive deeper into. On the education side, we help to.
Before you give those
Yeah,
examples,
yeah,
I need you to do two things. First of all, I need you to repeat those four investments.
yep.
All right. Repeat those for me. Education,
Education, community wellness, mixed income housing, and I'll explain why I think it has to be mixed income, and then long-term financial vitality.
okay. Then I need you to, you mentioned the East Side, and you mentioned you've been there 100 years. And just for the listeners that are from Duval County, from Jacksonville, and even from around the world, you need to pronounce that properly. I went and said I went out to the east side, and I was warned that if I went out there at night and got out my car, that I was going to have to say that correctly. So before you get going, I need you to say that correctly.
Yeah, I'll make sure I come back and clean up and pay proper homage to Audis,
Howdy.
as
Okay.
we affectionately call it. And yeah, that was our way of determining whether somebody was really from Audis as a kid or growing up. When someone said, "Yeah, I'm from the East Side," it's like, nah, you may visit it, you may have family, but if you're from out East, you say you're from out East.
Yeah, they told me
Um,
take the T's off, man. It's out east. Yeah, they told me take the T's off.
out
Okay.
East,
Yes,
yeah.
sir. Go ahead. Help
Uh,
us out.
and so, and I'll come back to that. But the East Side is a special place. It is, and a person that grew up there, in my adulthood, am even the more learning how special of a place, sacred a place, I dare say, the East Side is. Um, it is an historic neighborhood, and that's recently through the work that my organization does along with community partners. It is now on the National Register of Historic Places for various reasons, and one of those reasons is because it's one of the most significant communities to the advancement of the Negro, both locally in Jacksonville and even nationally. It's one of the most important communities historically. It's produced talent like A. Philip Randolph, who is the godfather of the civil rights movement, one of the mentors for MLK. Individuals like Bob Hayes, who is still the only person to hold a gold medal and a Super Bowl. It was the caretaker of great writers like Zora Neale Hurst, who lived there for a period of her life. A.O. Lewis worshipped and worked there for years. He's the first black millionaire in the state of Florida and started one of the first insurance companies in the state. And the list goes on and on of some of the figures that have come out of the East Side. And so the work we do and the investments we look to make in those four areas, PMAC, some examples there. And I think these are the type of examples when you look to revitalize communities, these are the type of examples that I believe any community should try to make. Our biggest investment in education is helping DCPS, the Duval public school system, our county school system, to open an early learning center. We looked at the results of kids going into kindergarten, their preparedness for kindergarten. We're well behind the bar. And so, led by DCPS and supported by us with some other investments, supportive investments, we opened up the first exclusive early learning center that our DCPS school system has ever done in our county. Fast forward 3 years later, the kids are performing well. We have 4-year-olds this past year who were testing at first and second grade level, and over 92% of the students were proficient and ready for kindergarten. So that level of investments will change the trajectory of those kids, and our goal is to grow that school, and hopefully we'll see some linear progress on those kids. On the community wellness side, really our flagship development there is a grocery store. We're in the middle of construction for a grocery store right now. It is a documented food desert. And our lens was, even though we believe food pantries and giveaways are part of meeting the felt needs of individuals who are in tough situations, those are not sustainable solutions for a community. And the community told us they wanted somewhere to shop. And so we raised the capital to the tune of what will end up being about 2.6 or $7 million to open back up an historic neighborhood grocery store that had served the neighborhood for 90 years. And in Q2 of next year, 2024, we're hoping to open the doors of that store, which will also be a store, a neighborhood market with financial services being brought by ViStar Credit Union with a micro branch, and then job training being provided on the second floor by Goodwill. And so that's a major investment there, along with some other investments in parks and green spaces with the city of Jacksonville. Mixed income housing. Now, this is an important piece because you and I are both lovers of history, PMAC, and the concentration of poverty was the demise of the urban core, and many communities where you and I come from, a hyper concentration of poverty, starting really after the New Deal, and with the invention of the suburb, the white flight out of the urban core. And we don't believe that concentrating poverty is the solution. We believe in a mixed income community, because that's what many of these communities were at one point. They were mixed income. You had educators, professionals, medical professionals right next door to blue collar workers in the same urban community. And so our mixed income philosophy looks to put the right amenities in the neighborhood where anyone would want, and there are options for anyone. And so for us, that looks like helping to rehab large multifamily um, apartments in the community, while at the same time working on infill single family rehabs for existing homeowners to keep them in place, and then infill options to bring in a mixture of incomes, all the way from highly subsidized affordable housing all the way to market rate. And on the financial vitality side, again, that deals with investments in the commercial corridor and improving the economic development opportunities with small businesses and bringing more retail, restaurants, and the like to the community. And so that's the four pillars we stand on. And can go a deeper dive into anything that you'd like to, but we believe that the right strategic investments in those areas will lead to long generational change in that neighborhood.
you know, having someone like you on, we got a lot going on. We've got Tropical Storm Hillary beating down California. They haven't had anything like that in over 80 years. The Hawaii wildfires, obviously, we know it's absolutely devastating. We've got a fourth set of a presidential candidate in indictment, which in Georgia, we know there's about 13 different counts on that and 18 other people in association with that. We got mortgage rates going through the roof again. We have murders at a historical rate in DC, and we had a bad shooting in Philly. Just around the world. We got the listeria breaking out again. I know my wife is cracking up about me with the listeria. I still don't eat cantaloupe. But now we got milkshake machines that have been found contaminated. And of course, we have this issue going on with this fifth grade teacher that brought out a book and began to talk to some students about gender identity and was fired. And so removed from the classroom. So there's a lot of things going on around the world, and even in Jacksonville, many of these things hit home just because of the times and social media and et cetera. So all these things are, I kind of wanted to touch a little bit by surprise on some of these things, but I want to walk through these four pillars. I want to ask some questions. They're not hard questions, but because you brought them up, I want to talk about that. The educational piece. First of all, kudos to all the things in the pillars of LIFT JAX. It's phenomenal. It is a step for sure in the right direction, and it will give people of color, the BIPOC community, Blacks in general, more specifically, an opportunity. It gives some equity there. A lot of times people say, well, there's equal opportunity, maybe equal opportunity, but it's not equal equity. And then I think that's where sometimes we miss it. From the educational investment, the Early Child Learning Center, phenomenal. Is there testing to get in that Early Child Center? Is there, can kids be X'd out of that Early Child Center?
A great question. And those four pillars that you mentioned, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that LIFT JAX didn't make those up. LIFT Orlando didn't make them up. LIFT Orlando helped expand them. But we're both implementing a national model called purpose-built communities. And that's a model that's been used around the country in several cities that we're implementing, which gives us a framework to do this work from. And then we're able to utilize success stories from other communities that have similar demographic and economic makeups to implement those kind of solutions here. So I wanted to be sure to share that. But it is a public early learning center. And so there is no testing to get in. It is open to the community. About 89% of the students, between 85 and 89% of the students come from that neighborhood. And Jacksonville is set up where you can send your kid to any public school that you can get them to. But part of this investment was to make sure that kids from that neighborhood, if their child is 3 or 4 and parents wanted their child to go to that school, that they could go to that school. And so it is as open as it can be, to make sure that parents have the option to get their kids there.
One of the things that I saw around the country, and definitely in Ohio, where I'm from, better known as the Gym City Gent on other podcasts.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
we saw a Catholic system that utilized some of these same modalities or methodologies as it related to early childhood learning, preparing the student. But then there were feeder schools. They didn't
hmm
just leave that school and go
yeah,
anywhere. There was a cause. There was
yep,
something that was going to have an effect, and that effect was continuing them in this awesome level of education
yeah,
that most children weren't afforded to experience. And so, is there a thought with LIFT
yeah,
JAX that there would be a feeder? Could a kid go from this early learning institution at 4 and find themselves at Stanton at 14 through
yeah.
a process that LIFT JAX may have some influence over?
Yeah, that's why the partnership with DCPS is so important, with them driving it and us supporting. And we are working with them to try to build a STEM pipeline in the neighborhood. So we're working with the neighborhood elementary school. We're working with one of the neighborhood middle schools to start to build that STEM pipeline on an experience that kids can start at 3 and 4 years old with a STEM like experience, have that similar experience at a neighborhood elementary school onto a middle school. Because you're right, you can get off to a fast start at 3 and 4, but if the elementary school has a major drop off, you've lost all of that advancement that a kid had. And so that is a part of it. We can't stop and be proud of this early learning center. We have to continue to partner with DCPS and bring in those appropriate investments so that the pipeline is strong, but then also the rest of the process or the rest of the stops along the way are strong as well. And yeah, a kid may end up at the Stanton College Preparatory School, or another great school that they could attend in the future in Jacksonville.
Well, that's great. I smile knowing that, again, I read your bio, sitting on the Alumni Association as a board chair for Stanton. My wife being able to grace those hallways as well. And my bonus daughter graduated from there. And I didn't get to graduate from Stanton because I was in Ohio, but I did go to the Miami Valley School, so ranked very high around the country. So I appreciate great education. And we know that it makes a difference. We know that it allows an individual to be prepared when
Right.
opportunity knocks. Community wellness. Is LIFT JAX making partnership in community wellness? There's some great things going on in the community now. Things like the blue zones, things like cure violence, organizations like Kids Hope Alliance, organizations like um, Partnership for Child Health. Uh, does LIFT JAX look to collaborate, or it not so much a silo, or is it kind of moving in its own direction, or is the emphasis to bring in all of these types of infrastructures and find out how the cooperation could be most beneficial for the community?
Partnership is a must. Everything we do is done through partners. We're not direct service providers. And so all the things that I mentioned that we do is done in partnership with others. And so us investing in an early learning center is done in partnership with DCPS. And so that is a huge part of our mission as what we call a community quarterback.
Hmm.
That's really the role we play as a community quarterback. And so any pillar you find, you'll find a plethora of partners underneath that pillar that we're just helping the quarterback and bring synergy and rowing in the same direction. That's the terminology I use a lot with partners. Our table is long, our tent is wide, and we just want to bring you in to help partners row in the same direction. And so you mentioned a couple key partners, Blue Zones definitely being one of them. Blue Zones is excited about us, and we're excited about them, as we have a lot of investments that we've already started making way on that match with the Blue Zone's methodology and mission. The parks and green space investments to create walkability and accessibility for folks, the grocery store to create healthier options, and some of the other things that we're looking to do really does mold well with them. Kids Hope Alliance has definitely been a partner. Fortunately, I was former executive with that organization, and so that helps a lot with bridging that relationship. And we definitely partner with them to make sure that our investments in the education pillar make sense, that they're well thought out, and that we're following their guide in many regards because they do so much funding in that space. And so public-private partnership is the name of the game. The grocery store that I mentioned has a long list of partners that I won't mention there. I leave someone off, but some of the major ones on the public side, of course, the city of Jacksonville and the state of Florida, who provided some substantial grant dollars, and then some major private partners as well, that help bring that together in partnership. And so it is necessary, um, necessary. And I will try to mention them because they're really big partners for us. Florida Blue being one, the Jacksonville Jaguars, ViStar Credit Union being another, Goodwill as well being our implementation partner in that work, and Baptist Hospital as well, being a big partner. And so those are the major public-private partners that have made that $2.5+ million investment happen, and the work doesn't happen without partnership.
And and we also know that Florida has been big on this over the years, and we know Governor DeSantis has mentioned it, and then our new mayor. We salute Mayor Deegan for her interest in building small business and entrepreneurship within the community. Does LIFT JAX help to guide, not necessarily give, but help to guide small business in these particular areas where we're building community wellness to possible dollars and funding that may be available to help, accentuate the work that they're already doing, but just short of financial stability and sustainability?
Yeah, so of all the pillars, I would say long-term financial vitality is my favorite one. It's probably just because of my background. My background is a nonprofit. My background is business and economics. And so this work really, to me, the pillar that ties the bow is the long-term economic vitality, financial vitality pillar. And that's where we look to improve small businesses, create opportunities, create formalize and organizing of small businesses as a collective, to connect to more opportunities. And even on the personal side, co-chairing the Lewis and White Business League with the Chamber, which was solely set up to help Black-owned businesses get bigger and bigger private contracts on with private organizations in the private sector. And so that's a
Awesome.
big part of our work, is working with the business owners in that neighborhood, the commercial corridor. One of my mentors in this work, amazing gentleman. He's an East Sider as well, older gentleman in his 70s. He's kind of I call him an OG, kind of a gatekeeper executive within the city. But his church, the Church of Oakland, which is a big partner of ours in the neighborhood, a historic Black church. This church built over 50 homes in its heyday. This church built an apartment complex in the neighborhood. The home I grew up in, my mother's first home, was built by this church. It was the reason we got access to that American dream experience, was because this church believed in economic development. But one of the things Cleve shared with me was an opportunity he believed they left on the table. Was he said, we did not deal with the economic 9 to 5 of the neighborhood. What was happening between the hours of 9 to 5 in the neighborhood? And we built all these homes, and we looked around and saw the neighborhood looked exactly the same after we built the homes. And he said to me, do not romanticize this work. you have to address the economic 9 to 5 of the neighborhood. How does the business corridor change? How does the success of small businesses change? How do you create an ecosystem? And in many regards, that's how I describe the work as well, PMAC, is we are creating an ecosystem in the neighborhood. And that ecosystem brings new people in to frequent restaurants. That ecosystem brings contract opportunities. So if we're building a grocery store, then how do we make sure that the GCs and contractors, um, minority-owned businesses that we're affiliated with or that are from people from the neighborhood have an opportunity to take advantage of the many plethora of contracts it's going to take to develop that building.
That's the inclusion part.
Exactly. And so that work is huge. And if we don't do that piece, I just don't believe that we're doing it correctly.
So that's great to hear, because that was going to be the next question about the building. I wanted to talk about the grocery store a little bit, and it's exciting to hear you use the word very quickly, but you used it, and so I know what that means. I've talked to you and heard you speak a lot. Healthy choices, and I think that's very important when you start talking about food insecurities, food deserts, and then there's a plethora of opportunities come in. We're not talking, and we're not mad at them, because we love their fries and their high C orange, but we just don't want a bunch of McDonald's and a bunch of Burger Kings and a bunch of fast food restaurants. But we do want something that's going to not only sustain the level of fullness in an individual, but also healthy choices that they can, grow and think and better. Because one thing will lead us into an unhealthy situation, and now we have this disparity of healthcare that we have to deal with, that becomes a monster for us all. So the long-term financial vitality you spoke of, and then I'm gonna hit you with something, and I want to jump to two quick definitions of yours, that a way you would describe a couple of things. But I do want to talk about the mixed income housing. Now that's going to be, to me, the most difficult thing to sustain, because normally in the Black American experience, one of our felt needs when it comes to and I'll use the word that you just used, romanticizing success, as we get the heck out the hood. I mean, that's just the bottom line. We don't want the crime, the dirt, the noise, the ambulance, the police cars. And so when you talk about mixed income housing, is that a reality? I mean, can you really talk about a doctor, a lawyer who has done well, who is in the mid 6 figures, or maybe just at breaking 6 figures? Is it realistic to believe that they're going to stay next to someone who's working third shift and coming home late at night? Kids getting up early in the morning, and and on the other side of them, someone who may be going downtown to pick up welfare and do training, and has a few kids, a mother living by herself, and the kids are out, during the day, and these are not fenced houses. Is it a reality that I'm going to stay with these two neighbors next to me that are not a part of boards and economic transitions, and kind of look stuck? Is that a reality? And if so, what is the how do you woo them to stay?
What's the incentive
that you do that?
Yeah, what's the incentive? It's a great question, and I truly believe that the conversation is around values and not economics as much. I think economics is a part of it. Eddie Morrison, who's the CEO of LIFT Orlando, and who's been a great influence on me, really has a great explanation for this that I believe in, and in that values play a huge role in this. If the values of the person that is working a third shift, single family, single parent home, or the attributes you gave, match the values of the high 6-figure earner, I do think that they can coexist. But even if they both were high 6-figure earners, or both in the same economic class, if their values don't match, that probably won't work either. So I think for us, it's how do we get folks into the neighborhood who want to be there, firstly, but then also you have to address the issues and the amenities that a neighborhood has. because if you don't do that, you just ask people to come, there is no incentive. The East Side is a particular special place, though. The East Side is positioned, it's an urban neighborhood, and it butts right up next to the sports and entertainment district. And it is a 10-minute walk from downtown Jacksonville. So we look at proximity and all the things happening around it. And you talk about neighborhoods that are changing, neighborhoods that we said, all right, we got to get out of. There's a lot of neighborhoods like that around America that used to be a get out neighborhood, and now we can't get back in them. And so for us, it's how do we let people know that this neighborhood is changing? The investments around this neighborhood are growing at a $1 billion level, and the wooing is this neighborhood is changing. Gentrification is a reality for this neighborhood. We and others are making investments in this neighborhood to make it a place of attraction and choice, just like any other neighborhood. Challenges are real. It's not going to change overnight, but we're inviting folks in who want to be a part of that change and see the writing on the wall of how the economics, the ownership and land, the investors who own, we're bringing all those things to light to say, if investors are buying in this neighborhood, they're buying for a reason. How do you begin to be the change in this neighborhood? Because at one point in time, the East Side was like that. Dr. Charles McIntosh is from the East Side. He is the first Black pediatrician in Jacksonville, the second Black pediatrician in the entire state of Florida. Dr. Charles McIntosh lived at the corner of Jesse and Florida Avenue, now Eiffel of Randolph. His first practice, was built at the corner of Jesse Street and Florida Avenue. He lived on one floor of that building, and his practice was on the other floor. And he lived in the neighborhood for many years. His neighbors weren't doctors. A lot of his neighbors weren't in the medical field, but some of them were. But some of them were blue collar workers like my grandfather, who had a family of young kids and who was a blue collar worker his entire life. And so it existed at one point, but I think the key to it is, what are the investments in an area bring a certain kind of person. Investments in the area also propel a certain type of person. Again, I think those are values, and some of that is economic status. When we look to increase or decrease blight, address blight, kick out slumlords in some of our multifamilies, one of the officers who was one of the chiefs in JSO told my colleague and I about 4 years ago now. He said, crime is one side of the same coin as property management. He said, if you guys address property management, you will deal with crime. So that means if you kick out some of these slumlords, it means you got to raise a certain level of capital. That means this can't just be programming. You got to raise a lot of money. But if you can, through joint ventures and development opportunities, kick out some of these landlords, get better property managers in, you will see these properties change and the ripple effect they have around them. If you focus on home ownership, which is one of our pillars on mixed incomes, we want to get homeowners into the community. How do we raise the level of home ownership? Homeowners of any economic class tend to treat their properties a lot different. They tend to treat their properties a lot different. So whether it's someone in an affordable home or someone that's in a market rate home. I sum it up by saying there's no silver bullet to that question. Sure. There's no silver bullet, but I believe a combination of those things. And we're testing this theory out right now on the East Side, and we have our first 5 homes of a program called Project Boots, which again is a partnership led by LISC, our LISC affiliate, that we're one of the main partners. They may call us the joint partner at this point. But that is a partnership, that is a program that is meant to get essential professional workers back in the urban core, those who got out, to get them back to live in the neighborhood, particularly the East Side in this case. Our first home that was built earlier this year, and our first cohort will be finished. In that cohort, college professor from UNF, a landscape architect with the city of Jacksonville, a pharmacist, and I'm forgetting the profession of the other individual. Some of them are from the neighborhood, they're moving back, and some of them aren't. They believe and know they're taking a risk. But we have a waiting list of about 90 people who match those different categories who are waiting to go through that program to move into the East Side. And I think part of it is the writing on the wall. They're seeing the neighborhood change. They're seeing the investments that are going into the neighborhood. There's an early learning school that's quality that my child can go to. The parks are improving. There's a grocery store that's going to be right up the street I can walk to or bike to. I think those things with getting new people in, while at the same time raising the standard of maybe lower income, because that's the term, that's really who we think of. We think of blight and the kids are out, and we're talking economic status.
Right.
How do we challenge folks to be better and address the look of poverty at the same time? And we hold those to intention with welcoming new in while also meeting those who are there where they're at. And so it's a plethora of things. And again, we're testing that theory out, and we talk again in 5 or 10 years. I'll tell you whether it's working.
Well, that's very confident to know that you'll be still at it at 5 or 10 years, and that the finances will be there to make sure that you all that are at the table with the minds that you have will still be. It'll still be an attractive initiative that won't allow you to just move off into other things. I think there's no question when you begin to address the social determinants of health and begin to look at what surrounds a community or what's in it. I think you not only talk about the value of the individual, but you start talking about property value. So value is a powerful word that you can begin to unpeel in different directions. And I think that's and then you start talking about, like you said, the values of the individuals that live there, because they're going to look for quality education. They're going to look for a grocery store that has healthy choices. They're going to look for worship centers. They're going to look for parks and recs and all those things that lend to that type of organization. I want to ask you this question quickly. Is there going to be a level of training, community informing? How are you going to infiltrate the minds of the individuals who are there? And how did you attract the 90 people? What was it that was a forum for that? That's part one. Or what forum or platform are you using to train or inform? And then part two is there a picture or a description of what success looks like for LIFT JAX? And as you have approached that or begin to frame that and are able to hang it on the wall, does LIFT JAX move to the west side? Does it move to Arlington? Does it move to the north side? Or does it just maintain for the next 20 years on the east side?
Yeah.
Out east.
Out east, yeah. Or Historic Eastside. That's something we're using a lot more these days because it is an historic place.
Okay.
And now it is officially the Historic Eastside neighborhood. But
Okay.
I answered that last one first. We committed 10 years to the east side, minimum of 10 years. This work is not fast work, and you cannot move faster than the neighborhood. You can't. If you get out in front of the neighborhood, it's a recipe for disaster. So we've committed a minimum of 10 years to this neighborhood because it takes time to make the level of investments that we're looking to make in the neighborhood. And then hopefully at some point we've built a sustainability. And that's why the neighborhood partners, one of our mantras in our work is we do work with community and not to the community. That is critical. That's at the fiber of our neighborhood. So an example of that is our board. Half of our board is from the neighborhood. When we were starting this organization, one of the things I beat at the drum on was I will not participate in this venture if people who are from this neighborhood are not at the decision-making table. Not a community board to the side that informs the big board. No. At the decision-making table when budgets are decided, when investments are decided. And so half of our board is from the neighborhood. And I think that helps us with the sustainability. And then our investments are done with community partners, community leaders. And that helps with creating sustainability because at some point, hopefully LIFT JAX is not needed. because there's been an ecosystem set up in place and sustainable um, investments where there's not a need. And then at that point, the hope is that we can go and implement this model and this work in another neighborhood of need, similar to where the East Side is right now. There's first two questions: how do we work with the community as it is right now? Again, a lot of that is through partnership. The Historic Eastside CDC is our main grassroots on the ground partner. They work with families directly, many of them low income, with services that they need, and they're our boss in many ways in this work. The CEO, Suzanne Pickett of the Historic Eastside CDC, is our board vice chair, and she is from the neighborhood. She's a community leader, and she provides governance to our organization. And so we have a initiative, a campaign that we're starting right now called Prosper in Place, and this is a resident-led campaign focusing on homeowners, but anyone can participate. We're really focusing on homeowners in the neighborhood to help them understand the value of their home, um, to help them consider before they sell, because investors are really launching on this neighborhood. Talk about things like homesteads, about the look and feel of the neighborhood. How do we take care of what's ours? Those kind of resident-led efforts are really what make this work. It has to go that way. We as an outside organization, even with someone like me being one of the leaders that's from the neighborhood, we have to galvanize and equip residents to help build up their neighborhood, um, and provide the right resources and investments to help them in doing that. And so Prosper in Place is one of those examples that we're doing that through. And then on the other side with Project Boots, again, that's a LISC-led initiative, and actually the folks, they go through a year program to be a part of that. So LISC is advertising that and sharing about it, and folks who want to sign up, they go through a year program that talks about many different things: financial training and equipping, and challenges of moving in a neighborhood that's in the spot the East Side is in right now. Some frank conversations, and then that comes with some incentives for them to be able to move in the form of some down payment assistance for their new homes. And that program, again, LISC leads, that gets them into the home. So it's a mixture of those things. But I'll tell you, I mean, I'll really hone in on this point: doing work with and not to. So all throughout our work and our different pillars, our different committees, you'll see us sitting around the table with community leaders, those who are from the community, um, those who are residents of the community. We're sitting around the table, planning, working, putting solutions in place that they support and that they get behind. And that helps to make sure that it's sustainability and community buy-in.
Man, that's phenomenal. We've really covered some of the questions that I had for you just in conversation, and I appreciate that. I want to shift really quickly before we end to a fun segment that's known as I Say, You Say. All right. I Say, You Say is just a fun time where we're going to present Mr. Williams with a couple words or terms, and he's going to shoot back what comes to his mind and heart. We want to thank our sponsors for I Say, You Say, True 7. And we're thankful for True 7. And we look forward to our engineer getting back with us and live. But we are appreciative of his work in a live absence. He continues to do great work for Who Cares About Justice, the podcast, and also ISV Consulting, where strategies that work, advice you can depend on, experts who've been there, can help lead your small business or large business into a place of vitality and realizing the vision of your organization. And they can be reached at ialignvision.com. All right, sir. Well, I say, you say. You ready?
I'm ready. I'm gonna try to keep it to a few.
Okay. Grandparents.
Oh, everything, and for me personally, dearly missed.
Young black boys.
Brilliant.
Community.
The village,
faith,
the foundation, the pillar.
Vaughn McLaughlin,
Pops,
family,
my heart.
change,
Difficult and necessary.
LIFT JAX,
Transformation.
the future,
Bright and
oh, okay,
bright and fuzzy.
Jacksonville Jaguars,
Super Bowl champions soon.
okay, I was gonna ask for a year. All right,
Soon.
all
I
right,
ain't the prophet. I don't have a year in particular, but we coming.
all right.
In
Well,
the
thank you.
in the words of prime time, we coming.
We're coming. Okay. Well, thank you for our segment of I Say You Say, again sponsored by True Seven and ISV Consulting. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a tremendous podcast for Who Cares About Justice. We have had none other than the top 40 under 40, Mr. Travis Williams, just phenomenal thinker. Obviously, you see the insight that he has. He sounds like an old man, but he is the YG. Two questions. What do you use the word earlier, and I'm going to get us out of here. You used the word earlier, but what do you think about when you hear gentrification?
Yeah, that's a tough word, and I think many times people we use the same word, different dictionaries. But and I like words, and I think it's important for us to define. Gentry. The root of that really deals with class economics, right? It's an upper class of people, and so when you look at gentrification, it is the moving of the economic class upward of a neighborhood. Um, Generally speaking, we experience that with majority white, higher economic coming into a majority minority or black community and displacing those individuals. Therefore, that leads to higher economic status of the neighborhood. That is gentrification within this, and that is an example of gentrification. But someone posed a question to me, and man, they asked me this about 3 years ago, and I was like, "Oh man, I had to sit with it." He said he's a brother, and he's a partner in this work. He leads one of the organizations, and he said, Travis, what if the gentrifier looks like you? Is it the same thing, or is it different if the gentrifier looks like you and he looks like me? And so gentrification, in the example I gave, is something I'm diabolically opposed to. And I will say there are opportunities where the gentrification looks like you and I, PMAC, and there's a way to maybe gentry a neighborhood that doesn't displace at the same time. Here's an example. The East Side has 300 vacant lots, residential vacant lots, 300. If a success measure for us was filling those 300 lots with people, with homes, of course, because those vacant lots, many are overgrown, they're blighted, they've been that way for a while. And if we were to keep everyone who's there right now, not displace anyone, but simply have a strategy of an infill housing strategy to bring folks in of different economic statuses, mixed income ideally, that could lead to gentrification by definition. If you looked at after that period of time, those 300 lots, let's say 70% of them were filled in, you still have another 30% to work on. But if you ran your data and said, man, the average income of this neighborhood was $50,000, but now fast forward with 70% of these lots being filled, the average of this neighborhood is well above that with some other investments that have been happening. By definition, you have gentrified that neighborhood, but in that way, You have not displaced people from out of the neighborhood. We don't use the word gentrification. We use the word with gentrification. That was coined by a professor out of, I believe, North Carolina, Philadelphia, I believe. If you Google that word, you'll see the African-American professor that coined that. But it is, how do you improve a neighborhood from within? And that's where prosper in place comes from. How do we help a neighborhood prosper while the people who are there enjoy that prosperity? How do we, with gentrification, how do we gentrify from within and make sure that the economic rise of a neighborhood includes the indigenous people of the neighborhood? And we have some tactics and tools in our toolkit that we're using to make sure that we believe, as this neighborhood trajectory goes up and changes, that the indigenous folks of that neighborhood, the seniors in that neighborhood, their property values go up as well. And so again, it's a hot topic word, but when you really dive into it, into the word, and give real examples like the one I just gave, there's opportunities there to do this work differently. It just takes a level of intentionality, and it takes having the established existing residents at the table to participate in that change. Because if you were to ask them what they want in their neighborhood, they're going to say the same things that the people across town want. I want clean parks. I want clean streets. I want a place. I don't want to have to drive 20 minutes to eat and to get gas.
Roads with no holes.
Roads with no holes. They want those same things. So they're at the table, helping to bring those things apart and improve their neighborhood, while at the same time welcoming new residents in, because normally there's so much blight due to vacant lots a lot and vacant homes. They've helped gentrify their neighborhood, but they were the pilot in it, and they weren't under the wheels of a bus getting ran over. So I gave you a long answer, that longer than I wanted to go, but that's my thoughts on gentrification.
Well, I mean, it's important because one of the fears or one of the pushbacks or one of the opportunities that someone who is opposing a LIFT JAX and opposing a mixed income housing ideology would say, you're going to have to gentrify. It's going to be a racial gentrification. And how could you stop it? And how can you say that you're going to take the step of filling those 300 lots versus what I call invisible bullying by offering individuals money for the houses that they have so you can tear it down and rebuild, knowing that the money that you offer them won't allow them to go to another home in another area and thrive and prosper. You really just, back in the day, we say you pimped them. You know what I mean? Because they haven't seen a $50,000 check. They haven't seen a $60,000 check. So they grab hold of that, not recognizing, grandma is 80 years old. She get a $60,000 check. She might be equating that to 1920. All right. This 60,000 is a different 60,000 in 2023 and could potentially look different in 2025. That money gone, and you're
gonna blow on it. It's gonna be gone.
Situation, because you're gonna use most of that money to move. So,
can I give you an example, P-Mac?
Yeah, please, because that invisible bullying, man, that raises something up in me.
I mentioned the invisible hand of real estate in this work a lot. Real estate is at the core of it, and that's why, again, you can't romanticize this work. This work is not program and services. It is investments, and it deals with investments. It deals with real estate, and that's why I tell people about work and development. A lot of our work is around development. Prime example, we had a lady in the neighborhood, been there for in her home for close to 30 years. She had a $4,000 balance on her mortgage. $4,000. Her mortgage payment was $350 a month. That sounds real lovely to have that kind of situation.
Jesus.
But she had signed a contract to sell her home for about $95,000. I get a phone call for one of our partners who built the home that she's in, LIFT JAX, our Habitat affiliate, and said, man, I've got this offer on my desk because I have to release the deed for this property, and I know this lady's been taken advantage of. I knew I was going to talk to you, Travis, so I haven't released it to the new title company. They've been asking for the title, but I haven't released it yet because I knew we were going to talk. What can we do? Because she's been taken advantage of. This house today, PMAC. This was last year when I talked to him. He said today that house is worth $140,000. Today, not in 5 years. Today, he knew we were doing a restore and repair program, which I think this is a critical tool in the toolkit of people who do our work. It's critical. If people were to ask me what are the different type of investments you need to make, this is one of the main ones in our housing work. Um, we do repair work for existing homeowners to the tune of about $20,000 in repairs to help them say no to investors. And he knew we were doing that work. The resident didn't know, and so I told him, hold that title. Do not let it go. Push that can. We sent our grassroots leaders to that resident, and we found out, PMAC, that she had a few $1,000 plumbing issue that she could not get a hold of that led to mold in her home. And simply because of that, she felt the best solution she had was to sell her home. Um, Fortunately, through this partnership, and that's why partnership is so important, we're able to intersect. We're able to convince her to back out of that sale. She canceled the contract, and we're actually right now in the midst of rehabbing her home, along with several other homes. We're doing a tranche of 15 homes right now, about 16,000 per, lots of roofs, HVACs being put in homes. But we talk about housing work and addressing the 300 infill that are there, while at the same time making sure the bullying doesn't happen. You have to give established existing residents a reason to say no.
Right.
And if Miss Johnson or Mr. Sinclair knows that my house just has a brand new roof that'll last me for another 30 years, some of the main safety issues I had, and these are people who've been in their home for 50, 60 years, a lot of them. We've given, to date, we've done about 50 homes. We did 30 homes last year. We hope to do somewhere around 40 to 50 this year. We're scaling that. We're really in a scale phase. And how do we scale and repeat this model? If we can do this and get to several hundred homes done, PMAC, we've given people the ability to have an option, which is the same thing anyone else has as an option. And that option is if you really want to sell your home, you can, but you need to get the appropriate value
That's right.
for your home, not a cash offer, which is an insult. Cash offers are an insult. It says that an investor knows the value of your home and you don't. That is what a cash offer is.
That's right.
And so if we can have that restore and repair home be done at scale for the needy homeowners, lower income homeowners in the neighborhood, then we can build that infill house next door to Miss Johnson's house, who's been there for 60 years. And the infill home being put there increases the value of Mrs. Johnson's home. But if we make sure Mrs. Johnson's home is homesteaded, then we don't have to worry about her property taxes skyrocketing, because homesteaded homeowners in Florida, their property values can't skyrocket. So all these tools in the toolkit um, allow us to get in front of the invisible hand of real estate that can wreak havoc. But at least we can make sure people have options and understand the value of their home. That if you choose to leave the East Side, or any neighborhood, if you choose to sell, know the value of the home and make sure you're getting the best value for your home. But that repair program, which is an investment, um, is a big part of closing the back door on this real estate issue, or a real estate um, that could become an issue with pushing folks out. So that that would be that's the conversation I have with folks who give a realistic pushback to our work. But again, it's a toolkit. It's a toolkit of a bunch of tools that you got to use and bring to the table to make sure to make sure that this works. And it's working in other neighborhoods around the country, and we believe we're seeing the fruits of that with this person who said no to that home. She's still in her home to this day. Her home is getting repaired as we speak. And if she decides to sell again, that check will be more like $150,000 than $95,000. I'd hate to see her leave the neighborhood, but I'd be much more happy with her leaving with that 150 than 95, because with 150 she can go buy her another home
That's right.
and be a homeowner. So that's how we tackle that. It's messy. It gets messy, but we can't romanticize this work, and we got to use the same tools that investors use. It's development, it's real estate. The same tools work, but as Eddie would tell us, we're looking to do redemptive development. We want to redeem the same tools that have been used to rape our communities. Those same tools with the redemptive twist can build up our communities as well.
Yeah, and very poetically, you jump through. I think I counted 7 different industries that help make that decision for that individual, which would not be the common move for the common man,
No.
because now they'd have to navigate intelligently through 7 industries. But you said it, the real estate game would have already done that and then come with you with information. I think Hosea said it best: my people die are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Well, Mark chapter 1 verse 2 says you get played because you didn't know enough. You know what I mean? And so and that's what happens. There's no way, me personally, and I'm not super intelligent, but fairly intelligent enough to read and to comprehend. There's no way I could properly navigate through those 7 industries by myself.
Yeah.
For my current situation. So you're talking about Ms. Johnson, Mr. Sinclair, you're talking about the folk that's been there for 60 years. And here's something beautiful before I ask you this last question. They would then have within them those values that you were looking for to build that community with this mixed income housing, and they would be able to teach that value. A lot of times we get pushed out, we get sold out, we get played. The real estate giants come in, they rent them to anybody, Section 8, whatever. They come in with no values because there's no value in the home for them, because it's temporary at best.
Yeah.
And they use it up until they've stretched themselves out, and then they're gone. And then hopefully all the damage was internally, so that person could fix it up and rent it to the next person who again may be valueless. But if it becomes external and becomes a part of life, and now we've got these slumlords where this thing is just looking the way it looks. I'm not with my 6-figure job. I just can't move next door. I don't care what type of 5-3 you put on this lot in the middle of historic out east. I'm just not doing it.
Yeah.
The last thing, and you mentioned it a little bit because you talked about redemptive development. So in a nutshell, how do you describe or define economic development? A lot of people love to use that word. They use it in the CDCs. They just talk about everybody's doing economic development. What is that?
Economic development to me is it's a combination of, and it has to be a combination of public and private incentives and investments in a concentrated area, neighborhood, a district, a city, a region, and that concentration of incentives and investments through the public and private sector lead to the deepening, the strengthening, the widening of the economic base of that area that equates to jobs, growth in businesses, the dollar turning. That is really what economic development is. It starts with, I love one of MLK's last interviews that's kind of going viral now. He talks about the dichotomy of people who tell the black man to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, while the history of America is it's white peasants getting incentivized through land grants, through colleges that were free to advance in the West to farm the West, to cultivate that land, all through an economic base that they were given through incentives from the government that led to economic development in those regions. And so economic development, again, for me, has to be a combination of those two. The government plays a part in economic development because they deal with things like infrastructure, right, in the city. Um, and the private sector plays a part in economic development because they make investments that lead to jobs and lead to contracts for small businesses, lead to jobs for individuals. But when you mold those two together in a concentrated area, because all economic development is concentrated somewhere. Again, it could be JAX USA Partnership, which is the arm of the Jacksonville Chamber, the JAX Chamber in Jacksonville. And the region for that is the greater North Florida region. And they look to bring in, through incentives and investments, bring in large organizations to be headquartered or have a large presence here in Jacksonville, which will lead to economic development because of the number of jobs they're bringing in, the level of jobs being higher income possibly, and those things have a ripple effect. And so that's how I look at economic development. The baseline of it is public-private incentive and investments in a concentrated area that leads to a plethora of growth for that local economy.
Yeah, just opening up just a myriad of potentials or potentialities. Is the Black Chamber of Commerce involved with LIFT JAX in any way?
No, they're not. The Black Chamber is going through a lot of ebbs and flows historically in Jacksonville, and I'm not sure what part of the ebb and flow that it's on right now. Actually, it's had its challenges. And I would say more locally, the group we work the most with is the Eastside Legacy Business Council. And
Okay.
so that business council that we help stand up is made up of all the major businesses on the corridor. Um, that is where our focus is because again, we have blinders on, strategically have blinders on. The Black Chamber, focuses on the entire city. I mean, that's their mission. I would believe it's their mission. And the Eastside Legacy Business Council is really focused on the businesses that are located in the East Side and our investments in that corridor, which we've committed 6 figures of investments for at least the next 3 years, 6 figures annually into that corridor to help those local businesses have been where our investments and our focus have been.
Well, Mr. Travis Williams, I've held you hostage for a little bit. You are a husband and a father, and you still have a few duties before you close your eyes. I just want to say thank you. We honor the work that you're doing. We appreciate it. We can trust the longevity and sustainability of some of these theories, ideas, and solution-based strategies will manifest because we have somebody under 70 leading the charge. And so we thank God for that. I guess I'm an OG now, and as an old head, you give us hope. You make us feel comfortable that some of the things that we've been working through are going to be in great hands. And so to you, to those that you give leadership to, and for those you are yet submitted, we appreciate you. We applaud you, and we'd be remiss to give you an opportunity to say one last thing before you sign off. To just kind of encourage Jacksonville, encourage Duval County, and encourage cities around America that need to be lifted.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you. Um, I'm definitely young. I've got a lot to learn. And the psalmist, one of my favorite psalmists, they say a midget standing on the shoulders of a giant can see much further than a giant. But he's got to admit he's standing on shoulders of giants, and so I'm short in years, but I have the privilege of standing on the shoulders of folks like yourself, Matt, who've helped expand my thought process, my vocabulary, um, and others as well. Our pastor, Bishop Von McLaughlin, the Potter's House. I stand on the shoulders of that organization. I've seen transformation. A lot of people haven't seen transformation, so it's very difficult for them to to believe it, to believe that it's possible that you can take a roach, rat infested, colony infested, prostitute infested building that's short, just shy of being demoed. You pass by today and it's the economic hub for an entire side of town. How does that kind of transformation happen? How do you do that? I've seen transformation, and for those who may not know, that's the place where PMAC and I worship 15 years ago. That's what that building was, a little more than 15 years, 20 years ago. That's what the building was that we now sit in weekly, that people have businesses in and eat in on a daily basis. It took vision, it took focus, it took investment and consistency to make something like that work. And I've seen it. I've seen it with my own eyes. Therefore, having seen it and been to the mountaintop in many ways and seen that, I get a chance to bring that level of faith, but also some experience of being, a part in some ways of that transformation. I get a chance to bring that into the work that I do every day, that the Lord has blessed me to be able to do and equipped me to do it. As I believe a modern day Nehemiah, the Lord has blessed me to go back and rebuild home. And he's given me some tools and resources to be able to do it. And so, I challenge us as particularly believers, and I know everyone who listens to this won't be, but particularly us as believers who find ourselves in the marketplace. The Lord has gifted us to do amazing things. He's given us more than a shout on a Sunday, but he's given us the mind of Christ, strategies and things to use to transform our communities. The Lord loves cities. It's all throughout his word. We will live forever in a holy city, the New Jerusalem that will be coming down, that we will inhabit forever. And so I challenge us as believers in the marketplace, working in these different mountains of influence. What role can you play to build up and redeem the blight and the decadence that we see, where Jesus would be hanging out if he was here, likely? How do we use the tools that he's given us to be able to bring his kingdom to earth? And I think the more of us that do that, the more of us that use our skills and our resources. It doesn't mean starting an organization like a LIFT JAX or working in one, but it does mean using whatever skills and resources that you have for the glory of God and advancement of all man, the Imago Dei, as you mentioned. And so I'm fortunate and blessed to be able to do what I do, and to be given the skills to do what I do. And I look forward to the fruit of the labor, and seeing this work advance and to transform a neighborhood like the East Side.
Well, once again, Mr. Travis Williams, we salute you, sir, as a good soldier. And we thank God for you being raised up in the historic East Side of Jacksonville, Florida, and making a difference. But you're making a difference all around Jacksonville, Duval County, this consolidated governmental area. We just appreciate you. And we believe that your voice and your work will light a fire in cities around America. So once again, God bless you. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, what a phenomenal podcast. What a phenomenal time with Mr. Travis Williams of LIFT JAX. It was just awesome. And the information that was shared was phenomenal. Again, looking at those 4 pillars, the investments in education, community wellness, mixed income housing, and long-term financial vitality, while LIFT JAX is looking to eliminate poverty. If you want to find out more about Travis Williams and his work, connect with him on LinkedIn and just hook up with him. And he's down to earth, as well as successful and significant in community. He's given us an opportunity to email him if you have questions about LIFT JAX. We don't want to use this forum to go in and start complaining and all those things. But if you have legitimate questions or find out how you can get involved, how you can play a role in this manifestation that we believe is coming over the next 10 years, in that 10-year time frame, then give Travis a holler. And there's his email address. And again, this has been the Who Cares About Justice podcast, looking at community and economic development and how it impacts the BIPOC community. And I believe that Mr. Williams has given us just a list of ways and things that could be not only impactful, but influential in the transformation of our communities. When we look at things like gentrification, with gentrification instead of gentrification, just amazing. When we think about redemptive development, when we think about not romanticizing in things that have already taken place, but continuing to push forward. I think these things are going to mean a lot for us over the years. When we look at using public and private investments in a concentrated area to really talk about economic development holistically. And when we look at those pillars, looking at the social determinants of health, we see that change can come. And so when we deal with disparities and inequities and inequalities of a community and of Black people, here's an opportunity for us to turn things around one stone at a time, one neighborhood at a time, one community at a time, one city at a time. And I believe that God has given us what we need to do it. And so, again, LIFT JAX is one of those opportunities to help remove racist structures and cultures. And to remove those things, though, it is still not the responsibility of Black people or other minorities growing up in communities that have historically been marginalized. We still believe that those who are non-Black must listen to the lived experiences and voices of those individuals willing to share their plight, but it's not their job or the job of the victimized and the oppressed to dismantle these forces that have marginalized them in their communities. Rather, dismantling racism is the responsibility of all non-Black people in their own families, on their jobs, in their places of worship, and in their communities and marketplaces. Our job as Blacks, as people of color, is to be prepared when opportunity comes, not to complain, but to continue to be consistent. Consistency and commitment are the pillars of manifestation. We have our job to do. America has its job to do. And together, I believe it'll take place. In our lifetime, racism may not be eradicated, but it can no longer be tolerated. Once again, this has been the Who Cares About Justice broadcast with your host, Mark C. McGuire, and our very special guest, Mr. Travis Williams of LIFT JAX. Listen, I want you to go forward. I want you to go in faith. And remember, when it all breaks loose and when it seems like turmoil seems to be the only broadcast or seems to be the only forecast of the day, remember these words: peace, be still. Bye-bye.